After my last video where I got to take this particular Ares L1A1 apart, I didn't really get a chance to explain exactly why I think this is the shittest top-end gun that anyone has ever made. We're going to ignore any of the fucking problems I found that were caused by somebody else. We're going to talk about the gun as it is and why I think that this is an atrocious bag of fuck. Okay, now, first things first, they've done a couple of good things. The Selector, obviously safe, and then semi, and then full, you can't access. If you take the upper off the lower, you can throw that lever around to full, release it by firing full auto, and off it goes. I think that covers the good things in this gun. Let's discuss the things that are basically fuck. Starting from the top, you've got the hop unit itself. This is a unit that slides in and is not retained by any kind of lugs whatsoever. This unit, even though these screws are as tight as you can make it, without cracking the plastic I might add, the unit spins and rotates. Which means your accuracy is always going to be all over the place, because your hop up needs to be completely fucking vertical. If it's pissed to the left or right by a degree, your rounds are going to be squiffy. So there's a fuck up. That's not very good. You've got the Ares hot rubber inside it. The Ares hot rubber, again, is one of the worst hot rubbers you can get apart from what you find in the fucking Nuke Pro gun. They are absolutely fucking terrible. Next up, you've got the way you take the gun apart. To get the gun apart, you take the stock screws out and fucking blah 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 blah. Once you've taken the relevant screws out, to get the lower away from the upper, you have to bend the loading nozzle out of the hop unit. And again, as you can see, the hop unit, although it spins, doesn't bend up or down, it's stationary. There is a slight gap in the top of the hop unit where the nozzle can retract, but if the nozzle is not in the right place, it catches on the inside of the hop unit and you're going to get damage. They've done their best to rectify that by putting the fucking cut here, but it's not a good enough cut. You've got the normal shit. You've got the Ares fucking piston cylinder setup. With that setup, as standard, there is fuck all air seal. There's none. If you don't have a good air seal, there is no cushioning. Obviously, you take the air, and even with the BB in the barrel, that is some kind of cushioning. So instead of the fucking piston going fucking slam and hitting the front of your gearbox casing, and you're sending reverberations way down through the fucking gun, snapping the front off, there's cushioning would slow that down a little bit. There's none of that inside this gun. Fucking none of it. There is no air seal. I don't know why, but Ares don't put an air seal in their gun. If you match that up with a normal Ares gearbox casing, on a version 2, it's very, very thin, and they tend to crack at the front, especially because of the lack of air seal. But on this one, the gearbox casing is real fucking thin, dude. It's really, really thin. And there were cracks on this one for that reason. There's a few other things that I can point out as well, but the most pressing ones you will find when you actually take the gun apart and notice, and you think to yourself, why the fuck did you do that? Inside any version 3 gearbox casing, where the springs and the triggers sit, I'll show you, on a regular version 3 gearbox, the trigger is made up like this. Now this is a G36 type, but it is the same setup for any version 3 gearbox, and this one is no different in these two parts. This sits perfectly stationary, and this ratchets backwards and forwards and slides so that you can grab hold of the switch, and then when the trigger goes, it can push the switch forward, and then when the gears turn, it flips the cut-off lever up, and that can ratchet backwards and forwards and rotate lovely. That's how it works. There is a hole just here. If you imagine the gearbox casing is sat here, alright, there is a hole right here where this spring sits, and you've got the small part, the short end as it were of the spring, that sits in that hole, and the rest of this then sits inside like that. Yeah? And that is what is applying pressure to your spring so it returns forward. Ares have put that hole in this gearbox. Now the gearbox casing is different to any other version 3 gearbox casing that I've ever come across, because they've got other things that are going on with it. But they put that in there. But they don't use the spring. Instead, They take this bullshit back here. They take the trigger, they remove a slot from the back of it. Inside the gearbox casing is a divot, and in the divot sits a little tiny bracket with a small hole in it, a spring. In that spring, literally sitting about a millimetre deep, is this steel pin. And this steel pin literally balances. It fucking balances. That then attaches the back of the trigger. I'll let you ponder on that for a second. You've got external parts that are not on the real gun, that they have applied to this gun for fuck all reason, because I took one of these springs, I placed it on the fucking trigger setup, and then it worked. It actioned everything absolutely perfectly. But it's not my job to change out parts that may or may not. It might do something that I'm not aware of. You know, I made the fucking trigger work perfectly. I had no spring or piston on the inside. I just made it turn over with the motor. But that is fuck. And to get that back in, honestly, I had to get my wife in here with a fucking Stanley blade and hold things in place inside the gearbox casing, because it took 4 hands to hold everything in place because of how that is set up. It's fucking terrible. What I also tested was without this little spring and without any of these fucking parts here. I wanted to see what was going to happen, because the little spring that holds the top of the switch, the actual sliding connecting part, the fucking spring on that is so tough that it actually actuates that and pushes it back forward on its own. That's how tough the spring is. Again, why I needed 4 hands to put the fucking thing back together. And here's where it gets really fucking silly. Instead of a regular switch assembly, you've got a micro switch. I know a lot of guns are moving to micro switches. I don't like micro switches. I prefer the normal way guns are set up without micro switches. But if you get a decent micro switch, it's no problem, all right? And that is what this gun sounds like. That's why it goes ch-ch, rather, you know, when you hear the trigger go. This returning sound, ready? That's the micro switch resetting. Now, the actuation button on the side of the micro switch raises up, okay, as this slides everything forward. It also pulls a plate forward, and this plate slides over the micro switch. Alright, that is why the trigger is so fucking crunchy, because you've got a micro switch that is stood up like this and you're trying to push a plate into it. Now, part of that plate is rounded, so it does start to ride up over it, alright, but it doesn't fucking do it. It sits there, starts to ride, and it takes all the pressure you can put on the trigger. Watch. I can move the whole gun. Literally, it's not a fucking light gun, but I can move that whole gun just by pushing the trigger, because of that fucking micro switch. Just to show exactly what I mean. Alright? That's how fucking tough it is to slide that flimsy piece of plastic over the micro switch. So trying to get all that fucking in place is a nightmare. If you add into that you've got a very, very big fucking spring inside here, and the spring guide is one of the quick detach ones. I don't know why they went with the quick detach in this. Well, I do, it's because I fucking cunt to get to it. But it is all held in place by all these pins and screws and bits, and, you know, I'm glad there's a quick change spring in there, but it's, you know, almost redundant as to how fucking hard it is to get this fucking gun apart. Yes, this is sturdy, there is no bend and flex in this, it is fucking lovely. But the way they've set this up is absolutely fucking shit. It is shit. Everything about it is wrong. Just trying to disassemble it. If you saw my previous video, you'll see as soon as that gearbox casing comes off, the trigger goes, haha, bye mate, see you later, I'm off for a quick wander across the desk, because I'm literally held in here against my fucking will. I can see bitches over there, and I want to go visit the bitches, so the quickest I can get the fuck out of this gearbox. Sorry mate, that's mine. I'll leave that here as a fucking deposit while I go get my bitches. Honestly, this kind of shit shouldn't be in a £400 gun. Well, it's not, is it? It's a fucking £500 gun. The barrel is fine, but the rest of it is a load of wank. There are no redeeming qualities inside this gun whatsoever that makes me go, do you know what? Yeah, this is really good. It's worth looking away from the fucking issues I've seen because of these other things. There's none of that. There is fucking none of it. Absolutely none of it. Even the pin that holds this in place, if you look at it funny, it's coming out. It's shocking. If anyone is interested in buying a fucking L1A1 SLR, whatever you want to call it, just don't fucking do it. Don't do it, especially don't spend the huge amount of extra money for the fucking woodwork on it. Just don't fucking do it, because this is shit. And I really can go on all day about how shit this is. The adjuster on the hop, that doesn't adjust anything. It's floppy and flimsy, and it's only got about fucking quarter of a turn before it's either all the way off, and it's loose. So, Ares, you know, I thought you were getting better. I thought you'd fix a few of the problems. You know, you've actually made the fucking wires black and red for a change. You know, there's something to show which is positive and negative, except it doesn't matter in this gun. But I know in some of your other guns with the fuck it, oh, just drop fuck it. Absolute pile of wank. Just fucking kill it. Burn it with fire.
So very briefly, let's just fucking run down what's wrong with this gun. You've got a trigger switch that is really flimsy piece of plastic. When it slides across, it still takes a huge amount of pressure to move over the actuation button of the switch. The micro switch itself seems fine, but that bit's crap. You've got a gearbox casing that is so thin that even fucking think about it breaking, it will go, yeah, no problem mate, I'm already there, and it will fucking crack at the front. You can't get any fucking replacement parts for it, not an entire gearbox, not a gearbox casing, you just can't fucking get them. You've got a piston that literally, the steel rack on it is absolutely terrible and breaks, and the plastic breaks off the back. You've got absolutely no air seal on the inside, because they don't bother putting a fucking air seal on it. The trigger pull itself on the switch is absolutely horrendous. The motor isn't all that, because Ares don't really want to put a high torque motor inside it. You've got a hop unit that rotates, and you've got a hop unit that doesn't even adjust the hop properly. The hop rubber itself is a massive pile of garbage. It may as well be made out of fucking unicorn piss. It's a vicious shithead to try and pull the fucking gun apart, and you've got to bend things you don't want to be fucking bending, and it takes way too long to do so. The entire thing is way too fucking expensive. Over £500 for this gun. The selector switch itself is really flappy and loose. So what you're paying for in this gun is a gun that doesn't work very well out the box. When it does stop working, it stops working very quickly, and you can't get any fucking replacement parts for it. £500 plus. Fuck off, mate.